Thank you very much, Mandy, for giving me the opportunity to be here today. I'm very excited to be here. Let me go ahead here and share my screen for a second. I'll go full mode. All right. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to this session. And thank you for the wonderful introduction again, Mindy. So today we're going to be talking about Agile transformation, the do's and the don'ts. But one of the key things, a lot of times organizations talk about transformation. What is really transformation? And then when you add the terminology, Agile transformation, what does that really mean for us? What does it mean for the organization? And what does it mean for us within the context of teams that are doing or part of that transformation? And also, what does it mean for us as individuals that are part of the team or part of a broader team within the context of an organization? We're going to explore some of those things today. And first, we're going to start by really understanding what is Agile and also understanding what is transformation. And then we'll bring those two together. So first and foremost, I did want to talk about, if we could take a minute to put in the chat or somewhere in the chat room what you think Agile is to you. What does Agile mean to you? When you hear the word Agile, what comes to mind? If we could take a minute to put in some responses in the chat, that would be great. Flexible, okay? Flexibility is very important, absolutely. Any other thoughts around what Agile is? Continuous increment, okay? Business value, absolutely. Okay, I'll take the last one. If you have any other person with any other ideas of what Agile is. Any additional thoughts? Accommodating, absolutely. So if you look at most of the things that have been put in the chart, you're looking at flexible, building continuously in increments, being swift, accommodating. Most of these things really boil down to your mindset, the inclinations that you have in wanting to do things a certain way that help you or improve the outcomes or the results that you seek when you carry out a certain task or a certain solution, or try to build a certain solution, or try to even get work done within that context. And then the other part of it is when we now look at transformation. I was going to also pause again, since we now understand that Agile is mindset, and the mindset we have around whether it's the flexibility, whether it's the continuous improvement or continuous increments or building in an incremental fashion, or being accommodating, being patient, being empathetic, being considerate, trying to get people more engaged in the process, being collaborative. We agree that Agile is all of those things. And it's a mindset, an inclination that we have as individuals, or even as a team or within the context of an organization that really drives us to want to do things in a different way. So now let's take a step back and understand what is transformation. So again, if we could go back again to the chart and respond to what do you think transformation is? What is transformation in your own terms? If we could get some inputs again, that would be great. What is transformation?
Did you want audio input?
Yeah, audio input by the chat, that's perfect. Either way.
Okay. Transformation is a change
from
one state to another state.
One state to another state, absolutely. And then if you look at it very closely, right, it's often something Transformation is, for me, I look at transformation as being a two-pronged engagement or exercise where you actually do the change. But when you do a change, you have to sustain the change. And you can only sustain the change when you agree and accept to transition from where those old ways of doing things to new ways of doing things or looking at things, right? And that's why we say transformation is change plus transition. It's okay to say, okay, we're going to change, and people get in the minutia of, doing things in the new way, but they're still stuck with some of those old practices, old behaviors, old attitudes, old ways and approaches of looking at things, right? And then it becomes very difficult to actually see a sustainable transformation. So when we're looking at really thinking of agile transformation, it's really that mindset shift, that fundamental attitude that will bring to the organization, or an organization decides to adopt and say, you know what, we are going to change the way our culture, our practices, our values that we see by transforming from one stage that we are in to a different stage, and we're going to sustain the transformation or sustain that level of engagement throughout the time we're involved or engaged in this transformation. And to be very candid, transformation there's no end state to transformation. So there's no end state to improvements, because improvements are things that each time we engage in something substantive or something that is rewarding or results in new outcomes, we experience new challenges, and with new challenges present new opportunities. And with those opportunities, that means we need to constantly put ourselves on a path where we become a learning organization, a learning team, and a learning individual. So with all the continuous learning that we're doing, we're constantly in a state of change. We're constantly looking at what is it that we could do now that is better than what we did prior to this previously. And with that, we're constantly looking to improve, looking to transit from where we are to a new place because of the new challenges in the marketplace, and mostly the outcomes that we're looking to accomplish as a result of some of those changes. And that's really what agile transformation is. It becomes a mindset, a fundamental mindset shift that really it brings us to a state where we change plus transit from our old ways to new ways of doing things. So I was going to pause for a second to ask if anyone had any comments or thoughts around this, although I know for the presentation today, questions are going to come afterwards. So if you're wondering what agile transformation is, it's really that mindset shift that enables us change and transit to new ways of doing things. So that said, let's explore some of the do's and don'ts. What are some of those things that we want to keep doing, and what are some of those things that we don't really want to do in a transformation? In my years of experience, I think one of the key challenges a lot of organizations see is not really looking at the big picture. And when I talk about the big picture, I mean, you're looking at the systems, you're looking at the people, you're looking at your processes. And it's not necessarily something that is, in terms of things that you want to do, you really need to get an understanding, because an organization is like a system, right? That has different components to it. Kind of your body. With our body, we have hands, we have legs, we have head, we have the body. When something is happening to one part of the body, it impacts the other parts of the body as well. Take that mindset and take it into the context of an organization. Without seeing the big picture, understanding the complexity or nature of the system you're operating in, the people that you have operating within your organization or working within your organization, and the processes that you have laid out, it could be a very huge challenge navigating a sustainable transformation. And that's why we encourage that when you do a transformation, don't make it only something that is more focused on the IT part of it. A lot of organizations adopt Agile and they feel it's just for technology. It's a way to make technology become more efficient. But we'll forget that technology doesn't function by itself. The business also needs to be part of that transformation, because needs to be a very key alignment between what the business is doing versus what technology is outputting, or the outcomes technology is helping to drive. And that's one key aspect of it. The second aspect of it is a lot of times organizations are quite not clear on the framework to adopt for a transformation. Because we're looking at it, Scrum is widely used, but it's not, Scrum as a framework on its own, it's not something that can be scaled. Scrum was meant typically for smaller teams doing specific work. So if you're looking to scale or transform an organization, you're not looking to just transform the teams that are doing the work. You're looking to transform the broader context from the big picture aspect of our thinking. And you need to really define what scalable framework are you going to leverage. It becomes very difficult when we start using multiple scalable frameworks, because most of them have different dynamics and attributes to them and applications of those frameworks that make it a little bit disjointed when you're trying to use both frameworks at the same time. And then most often people get confused either with the roles and responsibilities or how things should be planned, the workflow, how capacity should be managed. Though there might be similarities in some areas, but fundamentally speaking, there are core differences in most of these scalable frameworks, whether you're looking at SAFe, whether you're looking at LESS, or whether you're looking at Agile portfolio management, or some of these other scalable frameworks like Spotify, the Spotify model, that are fundamentally different. So rule number 2, adopt a single framework, a single scalable framework. Do not try to have multiple scalable frameworks. It can create a lot of confusion across the board. And then the third aspect of it is people. People play a very key role when it comes to transformation. With people, it becomes a question too of, do I really have the right people in the right positions? A lot of times we see people with certain skill set, and it could also be as a result of maybe some instances, and I hate to use the terminology politics, but the nature of the organization sometimes, when we start getting into the aspect where we're looking at who is sitting on the role versus the role they really play or the skill set they bring to the role, that could also be a challenge. And then you have, in terms of that, one of the things we don't want to do is to have the right person in the wrong position or the wrong person in the right position. So we always want to balance it out by doing one thing right. And the right thing to do is have the right people in the right position, because it helps. Leadership is a very key aspect of transformation. The success, even when we look at the 7 core competencies, when we look at SAFe, those areas, leadership, if we're looking to build a very customer-centric organization, the core aspect of it is for us to really have solid leadership. And if you don't have the right people sitting in those positions, more than likely you're going to hit a debacle. And when you hit those debacles, it becomes more or less, you have instances where leaders now try to impose what they think is best as against what they know is best. It's no longer based on facts. It's based on what an individual thinks, because they are mostly in that role. And look at that role more from a standpoint of authority versus understanding that they need to yield influence. So it becomes very important for us to mind the people or the person that you put in a role make sure it's the right person for that position. Because when we have the wrong people in the right position, or the right person in a wrong position, it could also impede or kind of stunt how far the transformation could go. And then the fourth part of it is creating that mindset of creativity. I'm a firm believer that everything starts with creativity. And for people to be very creative, it starts with the environment they are in. If people are in a good environment that enables them to think in a very creative fashion, that challenges the thought process of collaboration, brainstorming. And when we talk about collaboration, really, collaboration takes three dimensions as well. Being aware of the people you're working with, or being aware of the capabilities they have, and appropriately assigning them to things that they can actually thrive based on their skill set and the knowledge they have or bring to the table. And then having the base technology, obviously, from the standpoint of, I take that back. Being able to articulate, rather, what people could actually do in terms of what skill set and knowledge they have, and then being able to appropriately position them with the right technology, the right processes, and the right environment for them to thrive. So when you have that kind of mindset and you create an environment that enables people to think in a very creative fashion, what you see is that creativity drives innovation. And for us to be very innovative, we need to continuously explore new knowledge, new ways, new ideas, new opportunities, and also see new challenges that are inherent in some of those cases and really look at it as a way to even get better. So what it does for us in that aspect, when we're continuously exploring, that means we're continuously learning and we're continuously applying the new knowledge that we're getting or acquiring. And that even starts making the organization position itself better, align with the challenges of the marketplace. As we know, in the marketplace, one of the core things we face are in two prongs. There are market rhythms and there are market events. So if an organization is positioned to face a market rhythm, for instance, if we recall a couple of years ago, 1 or 2 years ago, TikTok came up. With the advent of TikTok, what happened? The market was shaken quite a bit. Everybody was so excited about TikTok. If you remember Snapchat, same thing, right? And then look at what Instagram did. Instagram came up with Instagram Reels. And with Instagram Reels, it positioned Instagram to also compete favorably in the marketplace. That's a typical example of a market rhythm, right? You're responding to the competition and what is out there in the market. Now, when we push it more to a market event, is also thinking outside the box and trying to think ahead, i.e., what we've seen today happening with COVID. COVID has fundamentally changed the way we work. COVID has fundamentally changed how people respond to work. A couple of years ago, 2 years ago, all of us were working from home. Though some people have gone back to their office, the organizations that are out there today are looking for ways to kind of promote more of a hybrid model, because people are rather going to work from home than really sit in an office space. And how does an organization respond to that changing dynamic that has really shifted the mindset and the attitude of people? So it pays for an organization to, when you transform and start looking at those aspects of the organization that could be transformed, to start looking at it more from a perspective of how do we think outside the box to respond to these dynamics, whether it's a market event or a market rhythm. And failure to do so kind of creates where we don't start thinking in a very creative fashion and innovative fashion on what works and what should work for the people that we've brought into our organization to enable our organization face the challenges and stay more customer-centric. If we're in an environment that is not that creative, that doesn't enable ideas, that doesn't really accommodate other people's opinions about where and how the organization should position, it can make it very difficult because in that kind of environment, it's very authoritative and things have to go a certain way and nothing else. So creativity is stunted. If creativity is stunted, the influence on people and what they do is also stunted, right? Because it becomes more of a job for everybody. People don't think outside the box or kind of bring new initiatives because they don't even know if those initiatives are going to be accepted and rewarded in a way that makes them even want to do more. So you want a scenario where you have people who can yield leaders who can yield influence and create an environment that is, very creative, innovative. It continuously explores new knowledge. And not only that, as they explore the new knowledge, they are constantly learning those new things and constantly applying those new ideas. And the last but not the least is, think agile contracts. A lot of times, and what I've seen in my years of being in this industry is sometimes every organization has vendors, and not every vendor is agile. So as you adopt the agile practice, also think about how does this impact the external vendors that I'm working with, because you have contracts. So being able to sign more flexible agile contracts that really focus on, how to manage your spending, the strategy execution, and most of those things that we do within the context of the portfolio aspect of the organization becomes very important. Because if the vendor that you have is not being carried along through that transformation, and you don't have enabling contracts that can help you adjust and stay a little flexible with the approach or the contract itself, it can become a very huge challenge. Because the vendor by law or by standard is not required to have the practice you have. But if this vendor is going to work with you, there has to be a converging point. And with that idea of having a converging point, the only way you can converge with your vendors is via your contract. So having more agile contracts and in place that enable you and your vendors work in a way that is synchronized, it then enables or transfers into the actual solutions you're building within your organization. Because if you have a more traditional contract, it just outlines what the vendor needs to do. Now, when that contract is done and sealed in form of the statement of work, anything else that comes after that would have to cost the organization money because it's considered a new add to the existing. So how do you keep your contracts flexible, and how do you go into those negotiations with your contractors and get them to really stay flexible with the way they negotiate the contract, understanding that you're working in a more agile, a more flexible fashion, and with them being flexible as well with the inputs they have to make to your solution delivery or solution development, it becomes very critical to the spending, the strategy around funding of projects, the strategy around maintaining and sustaining projects over time. And that brings us to a very key aspect that we do not want to do. A lot of times within organizations, IT or technology is looked at a cost center. And then business is looked at as the profit center. So what that does is creates a very specific silo. I'm bringing the money, you're doing the work. So in other words, it goes back again to what we talked about in number 4, the dump of number 4, creating an environment that is more focused on the authority. This is what I want, and I want it now. But on the flip side of it, and this is not something that is just the fault of the business, right? IT can also have its own aspects to this, or technology can have its own aspects to this. But there's what do they say? Who blows the There's a saying that who blows is it the flute or the whistle dictates the tone, right? If I am the one bringing out the money, usually I dictate the tone. And that's really the mindset of it. But if you take away that mindset and think of technology as a partner to the business, it changes the dynamics of that engagement. So there is no more cost center versus profit center, but people partner to deliver solutions that really drive customer value or business value. And that's what we'll see at that point. So one key thing, and it continues to plague organizations alike when it comes to the transformation, is how do we take away the whole mindset and idea of looking at technology as an investment. We are pouring money into it, and the way we want things is the way things are going to work. So if you're wanting a solution built in the next 6 months, what is the technological feasibility that could be built in 6 months? Is there a possibility that maybe we need to partner with technology to understand the dynamics? And technology needs to also be able to explain it in clear terms, because sometimes technology also loses the business people by being too technical, talking in terms that the business doesn't understand. So how does technology simplify the understanding of the technological implications of the solution and make it very clear and concise for the business to understand those implications, and then work collaboratively as partners to really start uncovering ways of funding, ways of building solutions, having the right skill set, having the right knowledge around the world, and set realistic expectations of when and how solutions could be developed and delivered. So if you asked me, looking at it from a very clear standpoint, think always the big picture. Do not make your transformation. When you think the big picture, look at it from a very holistic standpoint. Look at the entire organization, whether you're thinking about it from the standpoint of, okay, we need to understand compliance, we need to understand governance, regulatory, we need to understand the security implications, HR, and technology as well. So we're looking at all facets of the organization and how the solution we're trying to evolve really impacts the entire org. And at that point, we start making headway with sustainable transformation. I'm a firm believer that transformation follows three major areas. The organization goes out there, they adopt. The teams within the context of the organizations adapt. And then it's left for us individuals that are part of the transformation to also accept. And for individuals to really start accepting a transformation, it becomes very primary to them. What are the safety nets that are in there? How is this transformation going to impact? So leaders also within their capacity need to be willing to give people the time, allow people go through the transformation and understand that everybody individually has their own learning curve. And with that, I think with avoiding some of these pitfalls and doing the things on the left versus the things on the right, I think you can start making very significant headway with your transformation. So in summary, transformation is doing the old and learning, undoing the old rather, and learning the new, right? So we do have a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. But the fixed mindset is very critical for us as well, because we're all born within the context of an organization. We're all born into systems, whether the environment you're born into, the environment you're raised, the experience you've had, the ideas you've formulated over the years, the knowledge you've gained. There are so many things that make us up as individuals, right? So you just don't think that those things can be undone because we're going through a transformation. The idea behind it is that the growth mindset, in my opinion, derives from the fixed mindset. So there are things that you can question, but question it with the intention to learn something new. And I think that becomes the critical pivotal point for individuals and the teams that are part of the transformation. So if we believe that transformation is undoing some of those old practices that we've, over the years, grown over time, and then there are new ways to do things that could even make us get better results, why not? Why not give it a shot? That's what transformation is all about. And that's why we say that transformation is growth mindset deriving from the fixed mindset. You need both mindsets to sustain whatever transformation you put forth or bring forth into the organization. And then transformation is leadership and ownership. In the context of leadership, I see transformation when you look at transformation and see yourself as a leader within that transformation. Leadership doesn't only boil down to those who are executives. Leadership doesn't only boil down to those who are sitting at the helm of affairs making the decision. Leadership also boils down to those of us at the team level, at the downstream level, who are on a day-to-day basis doing work. If you are assigned a piece of work to do that work and you're not bringing that mindset, the agile mindset of taking accountability, cooperating with your team members in order to get better responses or get better feedback, or provide better feedback, that means taking ownership of the work itself, then it becomes a challenge. So I think that with transformation, when we see transformation or there's transformation in our organization, everybody should think of themselves as a leader of that transformation. And the only way you can think of yourself as a leader is by owning the transformation itself. When you own it, you actually find ways to make it work. But with the absence of owning it, then it becomes that short part, the transformation falls short. Because you now see individuals or people within the context of the team or within the broader organization not really accepting where the organization is trying to go to with the work they are doing. And then the last but not the least, transformation is patience, is persistence, is consistency. A lot happens. You have to realize that every aspect of an organization has been built over a long period of time. Changing that doesn't happen overnight. So most of the times with transformation, you see people get really frustrated, and the next thing they tell you is it doesn't work. It works. It's just that we don't see how it works. And when we have that mindset or that walled up mindset, it tends to create a lot of impatience, whether it's with your team members, whether it's with people within the organization, whether it's leaders getting frustrated that things are not done quickly or quickly enough, without really understanding that people need time to really adapt to those changes happening around them and create that safety net. That safety net around them also enables them to think about the work they are doing or the transformation as being something enabling, as against something that is going to uncover some of their incompetencies or fears, depending on what it is. And that's how we stay persistent. With that patience, we're able to stay persistent with trying those new things. Even if they fail, we're able to learn quickly from them and apply those new learnings from it to see how well it works. And then staying that consistency starts giving us the trajectory for predictability. How predictable can we now stay or say our processes are and the solution that we're delivering? We're staying more predictable in how well we're able to deliver and how frequently we're able to deliver to get our products to the market. And these are some of the core things that, or characteristics or aesthetics, as you might see it, that transformation really brings to the picture. So I was going to pause at this point to ask or address any questions that anyone may have moving on from here. Any comments or questions?
Feel free to unmute or type your questions in the chat box.
I have a question. Good afternoon. My name is Ibrahim.
Yes, hi, Ibrahim.
Yes, so my question is a little, I mean, it's still close to what you've been talking about, but it's just a little different because I'm new into Agile and everything, Scrum. So I just want to know, like, what is the difference between an Agile coach and a Scrum Master?
Absolutely. So think of a Scrum Master as a coach for one or two teams or smaller teams, and think of your coach in simple terms, someone that coaches a variety of teams and beyond just the teams, but it also goes into providing insight into best practices, values, and the understanding of the framework, even up the way up to the program level. So think of your coach as somebody who coaches multiple teams, right? Could range anywhere from 10 or more teams. I've been in instances where I've had to coach 20, 25 teams. Even in my current engagement, I'm having to coach 35 teams.
Wow.
But again, it's in a different angle or from a different angle because it's like coaching an entire program, right? You have multiple teams doing different aspects of the work, and then you're providing context around best practices and things that would enable the Scrum Masters take some of those key value propositions and take it back to one or two teams that they coach. They are the ones more at the team level, embedded in the day-to-day activities, but your coach is more between the team and the program and enabling them ensure they and align best practices all the way through.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Anyone else?
Any more questions?
Looks like you covered it really well. I am going to add here, just in case somebody thinks of a question afterwards, my email and my LinkedIn. Feel free to touch base if you think of a question afterwards. You can get in touch with me and I will forward them on. Because sometimes, you know, you get thinking later on and you're like, oh, I just thought of that. So, and I can forward them on to Markanthony for you guys as well. Because that does tend to happen. Sometimes you think of something, all the information soaks in, and then you're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, there are times like that. Yeah, absolutely, Mindy.
Yep. So we will make sure that my information is on there. So if anybody wants to thinks of anything, go ahead and jot that down. I did put it in our LinkedIn Live as well. Just make sure nobody else. All right. Well, thank you, Markanthony, once again. It was very, very insightful. I learned a lot once again.
Thanks, Mindy. Yeah.
Oh, we do have a question from our LinkedIn Live, really quick. Any real-time scenarios on transformation?
Real-time scenarios. Can we, when we say real-time scenarios on transformation, are we, I don't know if we can respond to that, if we can ask the person asking that question, if they are looking at more or less life examples that of a transformation that either went well or didn't go so well, so that we'll make sure I'm understanding the context of the question.
Getting everyone to talk on the same page on PI planning.
Do you need everybody to talk? Can you re-ask that question again, Mandy? I'm not sure I got.
She said any real-time scenario on transformation, and then to elaborate on it was getting everyone to talk on same page on PI planning.
Okay. So scenarios like, for instance, if you get into a PI planning, there are set rules or set the cadence rather that we do follow. Obviously, you're going to need leadership to provide context around the vision itself. The leadership provides the vision. You have architecture, also product management or leadership in product management come and give us the product context to really understand how to carry on that vision that leadership has laid out for us. And then you also have your architects that come around, the enterprise architect who, or systems and architecture that provide that architectural context or the technical context of what the architecture we're going to leverage for that solution is, before we now start going into the teams breaking out and being able to do the work. So there's a certain laid out cadence that we follow. That is strictly for the SAFe framework. With some other frameworks like GLES, the approach might be a little, the technicality is a little different. But overall, providing that context, leadership providing that vision or the context around the vision enables everybody that is in the room, we call it the PI planning or big room planning, to get and hear the same thing at the same time. And that way, we can start pivoting or understanding the direction we're headed with the transformation or the piece of work that we're looking to accomplish within a set time frame.